Hello, my name is Jeffrey Watson,
And I'm Ethan Edwards.
and this is the Ridge Podcast.
Today, we will be introducing ourselves and explaining what this podcast will be about.
Absolutely. Since this is our first episode, I ask for patience. It might take us a little while to get used to talking into the microphone,
Yes.
but I hope you will grow with us
Yes.
and stay listening. So our podcast it really started with an idea last week. We've always wanted to do one.
Yeah.
And, we just kept on putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And one day I looked at Ethan and I said, well, let's just do it.
Well, that's not entirely how the story goes, but it's close enough. We were on the bus to an FBLA event, and we were talking about podcasts, and we were just like, hey, let's do it. So he's right, but it wasn't this one day type of thing.
No, but it built up for a while.
It did build up. We discussed it, and we shared how much we like Lex Friedman's podcast. He's a big inspiration for us.
A big inspiration, yeah. And we never really had a solid idea. We had little things that we wanted to discuss and talk about.
Yeah.
But nothing that could constitute a long-standing podcast.
Yeah.
And here recently, I think we've been want to really talk to different people around our town, and that's how we really got the idea. Yeah. We want to interview people who don't normally get the opportunity to tell their stories, and I think it'll be really special.
Yeah, especially people that we may know personally, but we don't know a lot about them. So teachers, maybe coaches, people we look up to.
Veterans,
veterans,
local businessmen.
Of course.
So often you pass people by in their everyday lives and you forget that they're real people.
Yeah.
You might pass them in the grocery store and not think anything about them, but they have unique and important stories to tell.
Of course.
And if people don't ask them, they'll never be told. So I think that's what really we're trying to do with this podcast, is to give people the opportunity to tell their story.
A big fear of mine is that these generations that are sadly passing away will die with their stories. So many people have a lot of interesting stories to tell.
So interesting, yeah.
And sure, they'll tell them to their family members, but those stories will die with them too. By filming this podcast, we can archive those stories and spread them so that a lot of people can hear them and they can have a real impact.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of our generation, they don't have any interest in hearing these stories. As one of my favorite authors, David McCullough, he said the generations today are historically illiterate. They are. You ask them and they just don't have any interest in it. And I think that's sad. When their grandparents and their great grandparents have so much to tell. Yeah. And sadly, like Ethan said, they're not going to be around much longer. Yeah. So that's really going to be the main focus of this podcast, and we're going to do other things too.
Maybe some book reviews.
Talking about maybe music,
hobbies.
As some of you may know, me and Ethan are pretty big into the running scene.
Of course, ultra
marathons.
We'll talk to people who have completed them and attempted them.
Yes, that's something that we're really interested in. So it's not just going to be totally interviewing people. It's also going to be different stuff. We're going to branch out. We want to have some specialized episodes every now and then, maybe on the 4th of July.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And sometimes me and him might just have something that we want to talk about and discuss openly.
An idea that I have is when the flea market comes into town, that brings in a lot of interesting people, and I think going up to them and asking them questions, where they're from, how they got into selling antiques or whatever they're selling, would be great. You could hear some very interesting stories from some incredibly interesting people.
Absolutely, because especially there, you have a lot of people that are coming in that aren't from around here, and yes, we are focusing on more people that are local.
Yeah.
People that we have interactions with, and even some people that we don't have interactions with. I would love to talk to the veterans at the VFW. I think that would be...
That's one of our biggest goals.
Yeah, a great opportunity. I might be a little bit nervous to talk to those guys, but I think it would be really worth it.
Yeah.
Really worth it to have a real heart-to-heart conversation with these people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it's just really exciting for me.
Me too. The goal for the podcast isn't to make money or be famous. It's to
Get some experience.
Yeah, get some experience for us.
Yeah.
Learn how to connect with people.
Networking.
Archive these stories. Really, we just want to do some good for the community, and we want this to be a platform too for people who normally would not have one.
And we do want to keep it professional.
Yes.
But we also want to have really personal interactions and deep interactions with our guests. Because, I mean, if you're watching TV, you see these very professional and straightforward interviews. If you listen to podcasts, you see a lot of times really personal and in-depth interviews. And I kind of want a mix between the two.
Yeah, and finding that balance is going to be very challenging, but I think it's something that we can accomplish.
Yeah, it's something that we'll just have to grow together on, and hopefully the viewers will be patient, like I said before, and stick with us.
Yeah, you'll have to forgive us. The audio quality may not be the best. We're working with what we have and the locations that we have.
We're looking forward to creating some social media accounts. So we've already created a website. It's called
theridgepodcast.com.
All lower caps.
Yep, all lowercase.
All lowercase is not caps. See, our first blunder of the day.
Well, that's okay.
And that's all right. But yeah, I think that's pretty much our introduction, really.
I would like to add that we're going to try to keep it as natural as possible and limit the amount of cuts that we have.
Absolutely.
If someone speaks over one another, we're going to keep that in the recording, and that's because that's a part of a conversation.
About a real conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't want this to seem, like Ethan said, to be fake.
Yeah.
I want the listener to almost seem like, to feel like that they are a part of our conversations, because we have these conversations
all the time.
Yeah. So to share them, and to listen to them ourselves, I think will be really rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just to cap off today, we're really looking forward to this. I think most of our episodes, hopefully, will be longer.
Yes, longer, and with another person too.
Absolutely.
We probably won't have many episodes that it's just me and Luke. We'll have some guests, maybe more than one, but most of the episodes will probably just be me, Luke, and our guest.
And we're hoping to do one almost every week.
Every week, maybe. I won't say that we're guaranteeing an episode every week, but we'll shoot for that. Of course, lining up guests will be very challenging, and
that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to try to be focused on. Ethan's really good at the technology side. He sets up all the computer stuff and the editing software, and I have no idea how any of this stuff works. So I mean, I give kudos to him on that. But
thank you.
But I'm going to be the one that tries to reach out to a lot of people and to get people on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to end today, I think I want to give you a little bit of a taste of what some of our episodes are going to be like. So let's talk a little bit about books.
Okay, yeah. I recently finished 1984 by George Orwell. I also did my English project on 1984. I won't mention that though, but 1984 is a really interesting book. It's obviously I'm not sure if this is a popular way of describing it, but I call it a dystopian horror novel.
Doesn't every generation say we're living in 1984? Didn't they say that like in the 90s too?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't live in the 90s, Luke.
I think everybody says we're living in 1984. So is it getting progressively worse?
No, I don't think society is getting progressively worse, and I don't think we're heading towards a society described in 1984, but it does give you something to think about. What's described in 1984, it sends chills down my spine. I cannot imagine a world where I do not have the freedom to think or the freedom to express discontent with the government or the totalitarian power. Sorry, you have to excuse me. My phone is buzzing.
See, it's our first episode, but yeah, Ethan's you've been getting really into that type of stuff here lately. I've been going through the Federalist Papers here recently. Been on a big American history kick for the last 6 years. So
it's only since you've been in 5th grade?
Yeah. So that's where most of my reading time goes to. I recently got into Steinbeck too. Started The Grapes of Wrath here recently. Really good. But yeah, reading some classic American authors. That's what I'm really trying to do right now. I'm trying to get Ethan to read some David McCullough.
Yeah, I bought John Adams. I just haven't picked it up yet.
You'll probably hear me talk a lot about him. He's really affected my reading life and how I perceive the modern perception of history.
Mm-hmm.
He's an American romantic, and
he's wrote 1776, which I imagine a lot of you have heard of.
And like he said John Adams. They made a great miniseries on HBO by Paul Giamatti.
Mm-hmm.
I got that. There's a store called McKay's.
Yeah,
I picked
Edward
up the
McKay's.
Edward McKay's. I picked the new DVDs set from there. But yeah, I'm trying to get Ethan to read it because I think Ethan needs to branch out a little bit.
I do, but I've been trying to do that. I've stuck to mostly sci-fi for all of my life, really. I've branched out into some fantasy, but I'm really big in this sci-fi. But I'm branching out to the not sci-fi. I don't know if you would describe 1984 as sci-fi, but dystopian novels, I guess. I'm reading Animal Farm right now too. I'm going to pick up Fahrenheit 451. I would like to read Brave New World as well. Obviously, those are famous for being like scary scary novels. Not because they're cool.
I've tried to get him to read horror. Try to get him to read Salem's Lot. He won't do it.
I won't do it, and I just can't read. I read that book, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
Really?
I couldn't read it.
Well, that's not Stephen King's best. Nowhere near his best work.
I know. Like when I mentioned it to you, you said you hadn't even heard of it. So
I mean, I'd heard of it. Don't think I'm some. I know about Stephen King, yes, but yeah, and reading, like I'm reading the Federalist Papers, as I said before, and they're very dense. I try to read one letter a day, and that's to let me understand how the government works and the basis for it better. But reading is not also just about making yourself better or learning, which is very important now, and I love that aspect. It's also about enjoyment.
Yeah.
For me, it's almost a relaxing, evening ritual.
Well, it can be both. It can be a source of enjoyment and a source of learning. And as I try to maximize my time more and more, I sometimes find it hard to justify sitting down and reading, but A, I thoroughly enjoy it, and B, it is a... What?
So that's a mistake. Always make time for reading.
Oh,
always.
Yes. And B, I try to justify it by saying it'll build my vocabulary and increase my comprehension of English and allow... Yeah,
And you'll probably get tired of me mentioning this, but one thing the Founding Fathers, through all their differences, valued was reading. They valued it to an extreme degree.
And that's something that's consistent across many great people across history.
But, and this kind of ties back to the reason that we are doing the podcast is the idea of self-education. Going out and getting it yourself. I think the public school system does a lot of good.
Of course, yeah.
It has faults. Of course it has faults.
Just like any other system.
But I forgot who said it. I don't know who said the quote. They said, a lot of times school gets in the way of my education.
Education, yes.
And that's true. I don't want to just do things because it was assigned. I want to do things because I want to do them. And go on and have projects of my own. And this This is really one of our projects that we're willing to educate ourselves and willing to spend time on it.
And put ourselves out there, too, because it's something scary. And I imagine that we may face some ridicule for this.
Absolutely.
And may face some jokes, and that's just part of it.
It's your American right, to free speech.
Yeah.
And I think everybody needs to exercise that.
Yeah.
So, that's us.
Go ahead.
I would love for anybody to reach out.
Yeah, of course.
If you're interested. Do you know what platforms we're going to try to be on? I'm putting him on the spot here. But
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, some others. Hopefully will be available in whatever podcast app you use. I know a lot of people use Spotify now. I'm not sure.
Does Audible have podcasts?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because I think Audible has podcasts too, but that might be overreach.
We'll look into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to contact us, go to theridgepodcast.com. I'm also available at ethan@ethancedwards.com. Luke, do you have any way you'd like to be contacted? An email address, perhaps?
No, not really.
Yeah, you just contact me and I'll relay the message to him.
But I think we're going to set up a official podcast Gmail here pretty soon.
Yep.
So of course that's where all of our communications will, and eventually I want to get on Facebook and perhaps Instagram, so you could DM us through there.
Mm-hmm.
So to end this podcast, Ethan, I think we should have a first guest announcement.
I disagree.
Well, I think we should.
We can leave some suspense for the next episode.
Well, Ethan, this is confirmed.
Is it?
It's confirmed.
Do we have a date?
We do have a date of next week.
Oh, okay.
Next week. See, I'm pushing them here. Next week, we will have our first interview. And that interview will be with the board of supervisors member, Dr. Ronnie Collins, who is a
good friend of ours.
A good friend of ours personally.
Yeah, he's a runner too.
And he's well known in the local area.
Of course.
So I think he should. He's also a reverend pastor. He was. He was, and so he's a really smart guy, really intelligent, and really personable too. So I think he could be a great first time interview, and he'll go. I wouldn't say go easy with us, but he'll be more patient with us.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think that's pretty much it for today.
And of course, he's a big inspiration to both of us.
Absolutely. He really got me into the marathon and ultra marathon running scenes, and I don't know if I would do it without him. So he really got me into it, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure we'll discuss that next week.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, he's a busy man, so that's not a guarantee. But whenever he can come on, we'll send it out to you.
Yeah. And if anyone out listening has any ideas for people to have on the podcast, or maybe you think your grandpa or grandma or uncle, relative, or whoever,
sister, anybody, would like to come on and talk to us.
Yeah, just shoot us an email. Leave a comment on our social media if they're up yet, and we'll look at it and consider it.
But I think this first episode will be mainly on our website.
On our website, yeah.
TheRidgePodcast.com.
Yeah, until we can get our episodes on other platforms, which we should be able to do fairly soon.
But my name is Jeffrey Watson.
And I'm Ethan Edwards.
And this was The Ridge Podcast.